Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the DS Show. I am joined by a special guest today. He is the Vice President at Anaplan, focusing on the sales performance management and revenue operations advisory practice. Welcome to the show, Dana.
Thank you, Daanish. It's nice to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, we got to connect recently in San Jose. It was nice chatting over dinner. I know our clients were going up on stage and presenting, and it was great to connect them with the different industry leaders as well as the folks they're working with at Anaplan. I know we had a brief little chat there too, so it was nice to connect.
And I
Um,
I think we had some overlap time at Anaplan too. You're a former Anaplan employee,
yeah,
so we've known each other for a
exactly.
while.
Yeah, yep. We've definitely crossed paths. But for those who may not know you, would you be willing to introduce yourself to the audience? Just a little bit of your background, maybe pre-Anaplan, and also what you're doing now.
Sure. Well, my name's Dana Therrien. I've been around the sales and revenue operations professions for way over 25 years now. I've been with Anaplan for about 6 years. Prior to that, I was leading a research and advisory practice at Forrester. Serious Decisions, who was acquired by Forrester, and we helped companies really optimize their sales and revenue operations organizations. We did research in those areas. We had a lot of different models that we would bring into their organizations and help them optimize those functions and groups. So I always said that was an opportunity for me to be the college professor of my profession, because before that I led sales and revenue operations functions for lots of different companies at a global scale, large divisions of big companies. And at Forrester, I had the opportunity to write a lot of their research around strategy planning, sales compensation. I'm a certified sales compensation professional from World at Work. I advised them on the writing of the latest exam for CSCP. And now I engage with some of Anaplan's largest customers, helping to really understand what it is that they're trying to do with their organization, not just with Anaplan, but in general. And I help with our product strategy. I help with our marketing strategy. I do a lot of public speaking on behalf of Anaplan. And I've known a lot of people in this space and get the opportunity to intermingle with a lot of people.
Yeah, it's certainly a great time to be a part of the ecosystem. What year did you begin at Anaplan?
2019, in August of 2019.
Okay, okay. So we were kind of on a similar. We started off kind of in a similar time.
Is
So
that when you started?
yeah, right around then. I think I was like later 2018.
I think your path to Anaplan was a lot more interesting than mine. I think
Well,
anyone who listens to your show probably has heard the story, but I love it.
yeah, no, thanks. They're sort of being kind. Now, if we kind of look back to when you first started at Anaplan compared to where we are now, can you talk a little bit about the evolution you've seen just from the company?
Well, probably the biggest evolution is when I joined. I think we were about a $450 million annual revenue. Uh, Hemant, our
Approx. Yeah.
CFO, will get mad at me if I get this wrong, but it was about that 450, maybe 500 million. And then,
Mm,
just into this year, we were up around 1.1 billion. So it's doubled in size. The sales performance management practice where I've worked is the fastest growing practice at Anaplan, or it has been for probably 3 or 4 out of those 5 years that I've been here, because there's such a need to optimize sales planning and strategy and incentive compensation management design and administration. And we have a solution whose time was right. I joined because at Serious Decisions and Forrester, I saw lots of different companies buying individual point solutions that were disconnected from one another, solving individual problems. And at the time, I was doing a lot of, I'll say, preaching on the rise of revenue operations and the need to eliminate silos between
mm,
sales, marketing, customer success, and finance. And the Anaplan solution was doing that because it was a platform and not a point solution. It worked across those silos and those traditional boundaries. So it's sort of a bet that I placed when I came to work here, and I'm glad I did it because the visions become real. And back then, nobody was talking about open AI or any of those types of models that would need large data sets to sit atop of. So the time is right for Anaplan now because we've got this platform that consolidates information from the entire platform, and it's perfect for an AI model to sit on top of.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you mentioned you bring kind of this breadth of experience coming into Anaplan, and you mentioned sort of the growth that, with, of course, your advice and direction that it's taken. So when you come in, where do you begin? Or, like, how do you take this thing from where it's at and kind of scale it up to where it is now?
If I come into a revenue operations organization or a sales operations organization, I think it follows a lot of the research that I wrote when I was at Forrester. Typically, the first thing you want to get your hands around is the reporting of the organization, so you can put your finger on the pulse of the organization,
Mm,
especially around forecasts. So how are your results? What's the gap to plan, and how are you going to close that gap between now and the end of the fiscal period? After that, you can start to back up into that a little bit more, where instead of just looking at, let's say, bookings and gap and revenue, you start to look at pipeline health and pipeline acceleration, and you start to do a better job of trying to understand what some of the root cause is and some of those leading indicators, I would say. And very close to that would be sales compensation. Many times
mm,
the compensation plan has outlived its usefulness inside of companies. They haven't modified it in years, or even worse, they've modified it too much and they've made it overly complex, and reps don't really understand. So I think the highest priority is really understanding the pulse of the organization first, and then working on things like compensation. And then after that, it's about strategy and planning, and really trying to understand what moves the CRO or the CFO have to make to continue to accelerate and grow sales.
mm. Now, you mentioned how Anaplan has grown its SPM, uh, you know, I guess you could call it like bucket. Um, what things have you noticed from when you first came on to Anaplan versus now? Like, what improvements do you think Anaplan has made in that area? And just even as just an org, what's led to unlocking some of that growth?
Well, some of the wider adoption has come because sales and revenue operations people understand that they have to eliminate those silos between those groups, and planning and strategy has become a lot more collaborative. When I
Mm,
first started doing this, it used to be the sales operations folks would get in a room with the VP of sales finance. They would work out a deal between the two, bottoms up, top down. They'd be done, and then they'd start to execute the year, and then they would throw that plan over the fence and let marketing try to catch up. And customer success didn't really exist back then. It was more like a professional services model. The highest priority was taking care of sales, and then letting everybody else catch up after that. It was really inefficient and expensive. So I
mm,
think some of that growth has come from the need to collaborate across those organizations, but also I consider strategy and planning with a solution like Anaplan and a platform a new paradigm. So that means that
mm,
it's something that we've done for a very long period of time, but we're doing it in new ways.
mm,
And the expectations is that you're going to be able to bring speed, agility, and accuracy to that planning process, but the planning timelines have not increased. You can't. There's only 12 months in a year, and maybe 3 to 6 months of those are going to be spent planning. That fixed amount of time is never going to change, but you're expected to do a lot more during that time.
mm,
And what I mean by a lot more is being more collaborative across the go-to-market functions, all those ones that I've mentioned, as well as doing a higher level of due diligence at the organizational and individual level inside the sales organization when it comes to setting territories, quotas, and doing account segmentation. You're expected to analyze a lot more information, understand what the correlation is between the different things that you're looking at, and then turn that into a business strategy, and then deliver those territories, quotas, assignments to all the organizations at or before sales kickoff. And the level of due diligence that you're expected to exercise at the individual contributor level is the same level of due diligence expected at the CRO level. That
mm,
salesperson wants to know that you care about their number and their success as much as you do about the leader of the organization. And the only way to be able to demonstrate that is to be able to, number one, show your math, show
mhm.
them how you arrived at that, help them understand the model, get their buy-in to the model, help them understand that you know what you're doing, and then share it with them, and be able to take their questions and make modifications as you need to.
Yeah, it sounds like what you're mentioning there too. It obviously there's Anaplan, the platform comes in and you can build. technical sort of modules and calculations and reports that can show you some of these things. How much would you say a lot of this is a balance between the technical solution and just the business process and company culture?
It starts with company culture, and then the business process is what comes next. So you start with a set of
Mhm.
expectations that you're going to plan and strategize with speed, agility, accuracy. It's going to be cross functional across all the go to market and go to customer functions. We've seen the rise in power of the CMO and the chief customer officer, and there that happened for a reason because SaaS gave companies the ability to see everything that was happening from lead all the way through renewal and revenue recognition. So you've got equally powerful executives with their remits and their organizations expecting to participate in the process equally.
Mm,
So that's the cultural aspect of it, and then the expectation that you're going to do it with a degree of accuracy and due diligence and care. That's another cultural aspect of it, and the reps are really driving that because generationally, the younger reps are less apt to stick around if they've been mistreated, if they feel like they've been treated unfairly. The job
right.
market's still pretty hot, and it's easy to recruit a high performing salesperson from one organization to the next. The process is what has to happen after that, and the technology and the people piece of it. I think one of the challenges that we have is that the executives in the company are still indifferent to the pain that the revenue operations organization experiences in going through that entire process. They're doing it in spreadsheets in
Mm,
disconnected ways, emailing things, burning the midnight oil, making things happen, getting it done on time. So I think part of the reason why they're indifferent is that the sales and revenue operations teams have done such a very good job of delivering on time and
mm,
making all the pain invisible to those that are there. But eventually something happens and you miss a date, you miss a number, you get the plan wrong, and then sales takes a dive, results go the wrong way, and then that's the wake up call. So I would say that the challenge, how do you get somebody to care about it before they have to? It's more like preventative maintenance, like eating right and
yeah.
exercising before you've created a health issue for yourself, which is generally what happens and when we get called in.
Yeah, it's always interesting, right? Like that's and kind of there's like the if you look at it from an ideal standpoint, yes, we would kind of do proactive care and you're kind of doing maintenance, but in the real world, sometimes that doesn't end up always being the case, and
Yeah, when
it's
I'm talking about, like, in sales, we love crash diets. Like, "Hey, we missed our number, let's do a blitz day, we'll call everybody we know, we'll try to fill this pipeline
yeah,
up, and we're gonna pray that things are
yeah,
gonna turn around." And that really is you might get some short-term results for a while, but they're not gonna last. And what I'm describing and the type of culture and the process and the platform is really a lifestyle change.
mm,
It'll ensure your longevity and your health and your quality of life. But
right.
nobody wants to do it until they're forced to, unless you have those enlightened people out there who will.
Yeah, there's a good friend of mine who's a CFO. He likes to say that you have to eat your vegetables, but you also got to leave room for dessert.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's causing the question is, well, what type of individual who is out there? These people in leadership roles in these operations groups, let's say marketing ops, sales ops, customer success ops. Why do they want to stake their their career on making a bold move and making the types of improvements that I'm talking about? And the answer is that a lot of them don't want to do it. It's just too risky. They'd rather go status quo and just hope that things will get better. But it's the ones who are more courageous, the ones that take that step, are the ones that are more
Mhm.
successful.
Yeah. Now, one thing you were mentioning earlier is with the sales reps, right? They want to see the math. They want to see how you're arriving at the numbers. It's really, I guess, more the principle behind that. It's just like the transparency, right? Behind what's going on and just kind of seeing if they're hitting their targets, where they're at, you know. And obviously, they have a direct incentive and compensation tied to that, of course. What would you say are some of like the common warning signs or common pain points that you see from a sales org where you kind of are like, ooh, you're might be in a little bit of trouble, and maybe it's time for a shift.
Well, the easiest indicator is that they've failed to deliver the territory's quotas, compensation plans, strategies to the entire organization at or before sales kickoff. And I'll cut them some slack, maybe in the first month of the fiscal quarter or the fiscal year. That's the big warning sign. If that's not happening, there's a problem, and it manifests itself as a productivity problem where you've got an unfocused go-to-market organization. They don't know what they're supposed to be doing in the first quarter. The leaders deceive themselves into thinking that everyone's going to do the right thing, but no rep wants to invest themselves in an account or a pipeline or an opportunity where they're not 100% assured that they're going to get rewarded for doing that. So
Mm,
that's a loss of a quarter's worth of results if you're paying a recoverable draw to get yourself through the first quarter. The second major problem is high attrition,
mm,
especially high regrettable attrition, and people play games with that. But if you're losing 20 to 25% of your sales organization on an annual basis, it's really expensive to have to go back there and
mhm,
refill that that talent. I think what a lot of people don't really understand too is that the performance is not proportional to the individual. You've got pockets of performance and individual contributors who greatly outperform others. So
mm,
it follows the Pareto principle where 20% of the sellers are producing 80% of the results. And it's even a little bit worse than that because there's something called Price's Law. And you can
mm,
check this in your own organization. But if you take the square root of the number of sellers that you have in your organization, they're producing 50% of the results. So if you've
mm,
got 100 sellers, you've got 10 people who are producing 50% of the results. When you lose one of those 10 people, do the math. I mean, how many people is that really in terms of FTEs? So it's a scary math problem, and I think that a lot of people are blind to it. They don't really understand the cost of that. The other problem that I see a lot too is where sales organizations just love to hire and fire people. It's almost as if they're addicted to that cycle. They at some point in time that individual that you hired made it through an interview process, and it's never just one interview. They had to probably go through three or four or five, six, seven, eight people. I don't know. It depends on your
mhm,
organization. And then they decide within 60 days, oh, this person's a dud. Get rid of them. Number one, how did you go through that many interviews not to understand that that was the case? And number two, or maybe there's other organizational issues that are causing that person to not be productive. And if you can't get your hands around that, you're not really going to understand what the root cause of the problem is. Or maybe that person is on the cusp of doing something great, and you can tell by the leading indicators that are out there. Like they've created a lot of pipeline, they've had a lot of meetings, they've had a lot of engagement, they've had great conversations. They haven't closed their first deal yet, but they're on their way. And if you can't see that, and you're judging people just by bookings or by quota attainment, you let them go and you hire the next person. That you put them through the same cycle. It's so unproductive, so inefficient, so expensive.
mhm.
But sales organizations are rewarded for firing people because it shows courage, and it's not a great idea. Let's get a little bit more mature than that and really understand what's happening.
Yeah. Now, if I were to kind of flip the question now, like you've worked with obviously a lot of companies, you've been doing research, and now you're at Anaplan, right? What are some of the traits you've seen of successful, sales orgs that really, come to mind and that stand out to you?
I think one of the greatest indicators of success inside of a sales organization is product market fit. Like, hey, if you've got a great product in an awesome market, it's pretty hard. You can make a lot of mistakes as a sales organization and still do incredibly well.
Mm,
I talked to some of the people at OpenAI, and what's happening over there, and it's just such their salespeople still are on a sales compensation plan, the way that you would imagine it to be, where they've got a territory and a quota, and they're retiring quota, and they're getting commissions on it. They're just out there taking care of the customer, and everybody, they're doing well. They're sharing in the rewards of the company and in the success of the company, and not well. It's not an accident. They've got a great product. They've got a great solution, and the adoption is wide because of that. But they're enjoying they can get away with a lot more than somebody who's in, let's say, telco, and the margins are thin, and it's a shrinking market, and it's been disrupted by lots of outside players and outside sources. there's not a lot you can do there. So number one, have a great product and a great market. Number two, have great leaders and great management. The ones that are decisive, that don't struggle to make decisions. They do what they think is right when they need to do it, and it's better to make a decision quickly than it is to take 6 months to postpone it and put the organization into a pause. So I would say decisive leaders who really understand the nature of go to market, not just of sales, but marketing and customer success and what customers need and are deeply engaged in what's happening.
Yeah, and I just kind of want to pivot a little bit here. So, we've talked a little bit about the health of a customer org in terms of sales, things that look out for, things that stand out to you in terms of that are indicators of a healthy org. And this pivoting to a little bit on the application side that Anaplan's working on. Anaplan's really trying to infuse a lot of the best practices into the applications that are coming out. How much of your role, is more external facing, client facing when it comes to consulting versus internal facing, especially around the applications? And where do you see the apps kind of positioning itself in terms of a sales solution?
So for those who don't know, the Anaplan is a solution that connects disparate data sources into a single unified place with we call it the Anaplan Data Orchestrator. So we're able to capture information from your CRM system, from your ERP system, from marketing automation, headcount management solution, whatever that might be, any source system you can imagine inside of your organization, we connect to it, we bring it together, we normalize that data into a single place. And then we're able to build models on top of that. And the models are specific to the problem that we're trying to solve. So when Anaplan first started, the models that we created were pretty bespoke. Like every single time we went into a customer and they wanted to build, let's say, a territory and quota planning model, we built it for every single customer. Our partners, like you, built it for every one of those customers. So it was as if we were starting from scratch. We had a library in our head of best practices and things that we've done at other customers and things that worked, but it was a new venture every time. And when you start to look at the thousands of implementations that we've done and look at the quality of the resources that we brought into the company, we understand what the best practices are. We understand what companies do. We understand the similarities between organizations and how they've done these things in the past. So instead of making it a bespoke venture every time, it's now we have a pre-configured application specifically designed to solve that aspect of the problem. And if you look at go-to-market planning, it starts with a number of different areas. The first one is companies generally want to understand the market they're in. So they want to understand total addressable market, total serviceable market, total obtainable market. And that's largely driven as a need to inform the executives of the company about the direction of the company, where they should start to point investment and resources, and also to the board of directors when they're understanding where they want to make investments. So we number one, we handle that problem, and it's like I said, it's an application that is pre-configured that gives you the ability with some best practices around it. And then the next piece of it would be account segmentation. And I have a military background, so I've always been fascinated with sales. To me, it was always a strategy and planning and resource deployment exercise, a lot like what you do in the military. So the your the account market across the world is really the battlefield. So who are the existing customers? Who are the prospects? And then how much wallet share do we have in each of those? How much could they potentially spend with us, and how much have they spent with us so far? And then there's an additional piece to that is by when, because you have a customer that could spend $1 billion with you over a period of time. Unlikely that they're going to do that in the next 12 months, but you know that they have an urgency. You can see by the signals that they're sending off, psychographic signals that they might be sending out there, the way they're acting, the research that they're doing, the engagement that they've had with you as a provider. That gives you an idea of what the value should be. So once you understand the wallet share and the value and the way you want to stratify those customers, like strategic, named, enterprise, SMB, however you want to call it, you put them in those different buckets, and you do it in a collaborative way across the go to customer functions and also with the field because they want to have input. So we've done this thousands of times for different customers. We finally just built an application, said this is how you do it. If you guys want to modify this application, go ahead and do it. We can help you do that as well because there's probably some specific things you want to do. So that the next step in the process would be capacity planning. I understand the battlefield. I understand where the opportunity is. What types of resources do I want to deploy in those different areas of opportunity? So most companies are operating without any kind of a capacity plan or a um, what's the productivity model. So how many accounts can a rep handle? How many calls can they manage? What's the size of quota can they typically do? What's their work week look like? How much time do they get off in here? How many people do I need in where? And how quickly can I hire them? How long does it take to onboard them? What's my attrition rate? And then what's my recruiting cycle? So when you bring all that in, now you understand the battlefield, you understand the soldiers and how to take care of those soldiers. And then it it gets spun down into individual territories and quotas. So if you've got an organization of 2,000 sellers with overlays, you're talking about 2,000 individualized plans that need to be deciphered and disseminated from the beginning of the planning cycle right up until the end. So we another application that we have is territory and quota design and management. And from there, how do you reward these individuals? You through incentive compensation administration, but you also design that comp plan along the way. So we were able to do that. And then it's keeping your finger on the pulse of the business, what we're just calling forecasting and pipeline management. Another application that we're developing now to help take care of that part of the problem. So when I get an opportunity to ask a lot of RevOps and sales ops people how they plan, and they generally just give you a blank stare and they say, "Well, we don't know. We just do it." It's in their muscle memory. They've never written it down. They've never blueprinted the process. But when we show them the blueprint, they're like, "Yes, that's exactly how we do it." Oh, we make little modifications here and there, but it saves 6 months worth of conversations and user stories and all the things that used to be required when everything was bespoke.
Yeah,
That's a
so real
long answer, but does it make
yeah.
sense?
Yeah, and I think what the point you're trying to get to here too is ultimately the time to value is really starting to shrink when you're getting on the applications rolled out faster, you're up and running faster, a lot of the kind of the grunt work has been
Absolutely.
taken out.
Yeah, it's weeks instead of months.
Mhm.
And there's far less trial and error than there would. It's a little bit of a simplistic analogy, but I said that Anaplan in our earliest days, we were just a box of Legos that we would dump on your desk and tell you to have fun and build whatever you want because we were that flexible.
Mhm.
And with the applications, especially in sales performance management, it's really Lego kits for individual houses that belong to an SPM village.
Mm.
So you've got a segmentation house, you've got a territory and quota house, you've got capacity planning house, and you build these individual houses and you build them together into what I call integrated revenue performance management. So you can use the Anaplan applications, you can build bespoke models if you choose to, or you can tie into applications that you might already have in that ecosystem today, where that's how we want to be flexible.
Mm. And I think that's a great I love the analogy, the Lego analogy. That's a great way to kind of
Well,
summarize
it's not a coincidence that Lego sales took off when they stopped selling individual Legos, just thousands of bricks in a box, and they started to build these applications, these models where you could go off and build a truck or a house or the Millennium
it.
Falcon or whatever floated your boat at the time. People love
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, yeah, very true, very true. Now, if we pivot a little bit, we had a great chat about Anaplan and the applications, of course. Pivoting back to now your personal journey, what part of your, I guess, journey, like especially like looking at it right now, what do you find kind of the most rewarding in the work that you're doing now?
Well, I'm fortunate where I've got the ability to go back and look at what's transpired over the last 25 years in my profession and to look at where we started versus where we are now. And I would say that when I first started, the CRM of choice was a company called Siebel. And I mean,
Mhm,
there's probably people who've still heard it, and some people might even still be using aspects of it. But it was largely an online database. It was good. You could download information, you could see what was happening. But when Salesforce got in the game with a different vision and they built it more like let's say like a smartphone where you could drop applications on top of it and do with that platform whatever you wanted to. It really started to it invigorated innovation in sales.
Mm,
So people started building applications for everything. So to smooth out that process, to make people more productive, to make them much more effective than they had been in the past. So that's been really awesome to see, and then also to see the next generation of people coming up and doing what we began. I started in 2000 doing this, but the level of talent and quality and intelligence is just incredible in this field now. We were just good at spreadsheets back 25 years
mm,
ago. These
yeah,
people are good at a lot of things now.
yeah.
I think so. That's the positive side, is to see the innovation and the creativity and the number of individuals and the recognition that they've gotten. I say that the VP of Revenue Operations has reached a level of importance where they get fired before the CSO now, instead of the CSO, because there's one more person to blame for whatever's going on. I think probably some of the downside to it is that things have become hyper optimized and depersonalized to a very high degree, where we've got these people like sales ops and revenue operations people like myself who build these science projects, who think that they understand interpersonal interaction and the science of sales and the, let's say, the psychology of sales. And we really don't. It's not just all about tracking numbers.
Mhm,
And we've gone to a degree now where I start to see a lot of CROs who are former operations people, and the board wants that person in there because they just want to see the reports.
mm.
And it's not that simple.
Yeah, you mentioned the science aspect of it. How much of it do you think is a balance between like a science and an art form?
It's I mean, it's hard. You can't, the science has certainly helped. It's taken all the waste out of the sales organization, but it's probably 50-50.
Mm,
And we've over-rotated on the science piece of it.
yeah, yeah. Now, looking at your journey, you've kind of gone from manager to director, VP, multiple leadership roles during your career. Um, what roles have certain mentors played for you across your career journey?
I think the most important mentors I had were the ones that were outside of work.
Mm,
The people who I trusted and respected, and who had they were really philosophers to a degree, who understood human nature deeply and had a perspective on interpersonal reactions and how people generally operate. And a lot of that came from the military too, I think, because
yeah.
it was a people business in the end. So they understood the nature of high performance and the nature of peak and optimal performance in individuals and in themselves. So I've really appreciated those types of mentors, and I was somebody that always paid attention. I've met so many interesting people over my career. I mean, it might just be that you met them at a cocktail party and you talked to them for 2 or 3 hours and they talked to you about what their life was like and what they went through. I was just reflecting on the time I spent in Europe as a young officer. I was assigned to NATO headquarters in Belgium, and there was a there was a colonel there from the Dutch Air Force, and I was 23,
Mm,
and he was probably my age now. I'm 57 years old, and he was reflecting on his experience in the Dutch military and having grown up that way. But one of his most memorable experiences was being a young child in World War II in the Netherlands after it had been overtaken, and
mm,
what his experience was like, and then the change that he saw from that point forward all the way through Europe, and then seeing Europe mature into the early 90s where I was there, and it's matured even more now. But I've had the opportunity, so I did it as a young officer, and I talked to him for hours and hours and hours. I used to go. His wife worked for me, and they had a little chalet out in Belgium, and she would prepare an incredible French meal, and we would just sit there and talk for hours and hours and hours. That was something different than what I had experienced in the way that I grew up. But 5 years ago, my wife and I went back there and spent time with them, and he was still just as sharp and lucid as he was back then, and still sharing that life advice and the perspective of what he had been through.
mm,
So I find that sharing of experience to be incredibly applicable to my profession, the people that I get to work with, the people I get to associate with, and the way it affected my career trajectory. So yeah, I mean, you can look, you can sit down with anybody and they can tell you the science of sales and the numbers of it and do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. But a lot of people can do that. It's not quite as interesting as the human experience for me.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because I'm older now. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's quite remarkable, and obviously you've got a great story, and obviously a lot of people have great stories, and it's always great to connect on that
Well,
interpersonal.
what was the spark? Like, I'm fascinated by your story. Like, I read it once years ago, and it always stuck with me. I saw the pictures of you standing on the street corner with
Mhm.
handing out your resumes. What made you do that?
Yeah, I think for me it was just frustration with the status quo. I think right because I'd been filling out so many job applications when I was kind of fresh looking for work, and those automatic rejection letters, right? Just kept hundreds of them, right? And I'm like, all right. And then just my personal nature is often like, okay, I could just throw in the towel with this, or try something that I haven't tried yet before, right? And I didn't know what it was at the time, but I remember I was scrolling through LinkedIn, and this gentleman was holding up a sign. He was homeless, a little bit different situation, but his sign said "homeless, hungry for success," and he held up the sign in Silicon Valley. And I just remember seeing that post with millions of likes and hundreds of thousands of comments, and he ended up getting a job offer somewhere. I don't remember, but it was one of the Silicon Valley like tech companies that brought him on. I was like, "Huh, I should try that," right? And ended up going to the nearest Target that day when I saw it. Just picked up a poster board, some markers, and went to the nearest library to mass print out some resumes, and uh, the rest was history, as they say.
So I get I'm more interested in what creates a spark for somebody to do that. I know you're a master planner. You're one of the smartest guys out
Yeah,
there that knows how to do this stuff. You know the technical aspects of it. Without a doubt, you can engineer a solution. But
yeah.
what made you do that?
With
That
with the sign itself, like, what
yeah,
made me
I
go
mean,
out?
spark that made you do that. That makes you
Yeah. I
cool.
I I think yeah, I don't know, like, if I don't know if I would be able to pinpoint it to one thing, but I think definitely my father's been he's got the entrepreneurial sort of spirit, like, throughout his life, he's been an entrepreneur in many different industries, but more recently, he's been doing, like, uh, uh, convenience store, gas stations, that sort of thing, but more blue collar, type of work, and he's always kinda had this itch of, like, you know, uh, just trying new things, and like, even when he's inside the store, he's like, "What if I put this product in front of the store? What if I
Yeah.
put this what if I moved the milk shelf from here to there?" Like, well, as people walk by, what is it gonna catch their attention? And I think that sort of, like, getting people's attention as they're navigating the store, sort of thing is just I don't know, something maybe about that translated, and I know my dad's always a big, like he'll talk to every customer that walks in and try and have a great conversation with them, regardless of
Yeah.
who they are, and I don't know, I think some of that has just been modeled from him, I would say, and then I think part of it was just ultimately, like, me truly just being frustrated with the status quo, and I'm like, "Alright, something's gotta change, like, I
Well,
can't keep
would you
going."
consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
It's funny. Naturally, I think I'm an introvert. I think I'm an introvert. I say that, but then when I tell people that, people are always surprised because, like, the one thing is you put me in an interpersonal setting, especially like this, and that's where I thrive. You put me in a big group setting, that's where I'm kind of the quietest person in the
Yeah, I'm the
room.
same way. Like to go out there and meet a couple of hundred people at a party, it's difficult for me.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you tapped into something anyway. It's that refusal to quit.
Mhm.
It's surprising that an introvert would expose themselves on a street corner
Yeah.
in front of
Yeah.
thousands of people and basically say, "Hey, I need help." Again, there's something else that makes you
Yeah.
interesting, but now you're running your own company. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
wasn't just one event. That was a
No.
lifestyle, and it's carried forward into what you've done. You were very successful in Anaplan, and now you're off,
Yeah.
managing your own business. It's pretty incredible. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get the answer to your question is that interests me. That's the part of it that I love, and
Mm.
talking to individuals and what they're willing to do.
Yeah. Well, I think honestly, I would say the same thing, and that's why we have a show like this one where I just invite people and we shoot the breeze a little bit, catch up, and get to know people's stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Our last question from my end here, as we look to wrap up, for people looking, this is again a little bit. going back to my story, right? For as I was coming out, I didn't even know what Anaplan was, but for new people coming out, out of college or fresh into the workforce, um, especially particularly like in sales. So let's say somebody's starting out as a sales rep, or maybe they're a new AE, or what have you. Like, what advice would you have to the average new sales professional coming onto the scene? As for someone in 2025, I suppose, what advice would you give them on their career and their journey?
I mean, I think it's the advice that my advice is the example that you set and the approach that you took to getting your first job with Anaplan is to never quit. Um, I started to look at performance differently over the last few years. Like 4 years ago, it'll be 4 years, October 10th of this year. You know, I said, well, what would happen? Like, I picked up running again like 6 years ago, and I started to run a lot, and I started to see really cool results. I'd done it a lot when I was in the military and I was in my 20s, and I said, what if I just ran every day for a year? And
Mm,
then, so I started on October 10th, and I started running every day. And then in February, I started doing this thing called 75 hard, where you had to there were things that you had to do for a period of 75 days where you had to eat right, you had to exercise, and you had to do it twice a day. And one of those things was
mhm,
outdoors. So I live in the state of Maine. It's freezing up here in the wintertime. But then I started to go outdoors in addition to that. So it's been like February 13th, 2021. It's been every day outdoors. So I'm at like 3 years and 8 months now. Is that right? Every single day without a day off, generally about 6 miles a day on average.
mm,
And then there's days that I'm out there and just dying, like it's painful, it's raining, it sucks, I'm tired, I don't want to do this. But then I look around, I'm in nature outdoors. Maybe the sun is shining on me, maybe I'm being rained on, but I just think about how lucky I am to be able to be out there and do that, and to be fortunate enough to be complaining about the environment that I'm in, but still trying. So I,
mm,
I would guess, uh, for anyone that's going out there, and like it was indicative of my personality before I did that. It just became a lot more dramatic when I started to do it this way. Is love the struggle, like feel it as a privilege to even be able to be out there failing that day, like not hitting the number, not being able to do what you want to do, not being as good as you want to be. You're as good as you are that day, and you're working towards something bigger and better. That was a huge transformation for me, and something I really do love. Especially if I'm on a training plan, I'm supposed to be running like a 7 minute mile, and I'm only running like a 7:15. I'm like, oh, I'm missing it. But it's a privilege to hit that 7:15. I'm 57 years old. I can still be out there. My legs still work. So maybe a little bit philosophical, but it really is loving the struggle, not quitting, like what you did.
yeah. Yeah, a lot of parallels, I think, between our journeys and, of course, our own unique ways, but,
Yeah, could you
yeah,
imagine where your life I mean, maybe it would be better, who knows, but what would your life be? You and I wouldn't be talking right now if you hadn't
yeah,
done
yeah,
what you did, so it's pretty cool,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's something I like to tell people too, is sometimes people ask, like, especially when they're trying to choose or make a decision between 2 things, like, "Should I do this or should I do that?" Honestly, I don't even know what to tell you, like, just pick, and because you won't really know otherwise, right? Like, for me, like,
Yeah, and go out and fail.
exactly.
Go fail at something,
Mhm,
because the alternative to not doing it at all is terrible. You better to go out and try and fail than to not try at
mhm.
all.
Yeah, or it's better to make a decision and find out as opposed to being stuck
Yeah, and
analyzing.
like you, my father worked in a paper mill, he was blue collar.
Mm,
He showed up every day. He
yep,
never missed a
yeah,
day of work.
yep, yeah.
Ever,
There's
not
a
once.
real beauty to that, like a
Yeah.
sense of duty or pride, you know?
Yeah, towards the end of his life, and he went back and he looked at the struggles. He was a Korean War vet, and he went through the turmoil of the downfall of industrial America in the 20th century. And towards the end, he said, "Well, I never missed a meal." That was his mark for success. That he never missed a meal. They weren't always great meals, but he never missed one. And he said, "I've led a good life. I was successful." He had 5 kids. We all did well. He was a great guy.
Yeah. Well, Dana, thanks for coming on the show. Congratulations on all your success.
Thank
As
you.
we
Well,
wrap,
congrats to you.
yes, thank you. Yeah, and as we wrap up here, any last words for the audience?
Hey, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me on LinkedIn is the best way to have a conversation with me.
Awesome. Well, Dana, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and definitely look forward. We should do this again sometime.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep. Cheers.